Co-hosts Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That means that is Saunders. First off, I guess I should ask how you're doing on this fabulous Tuesday. We got some snowfall today, which is basically the only thing to talk about.
I love the snow. I'm glad it's here. Waited for it all year. Big fan of the snow.
You are a snow guy, okay? You know, there's a lot of people that might be a hot topic. That might be honestly the most controversial thing to talk about.
We did get a request from one member of the audience to do an episode not about Steelers football. So maybe we can just talk about the snow. I mean, there's nothing else going on today, right?
Andrew McCutcheon's back. 1 year, $5 million deal with Pirates. That's it.
Wait. Andrew McCutcheon is the biggest signing of the year for a Major League Baseball team. Mason Rudolph is a starting quarterback, and Sidney Crosby's the best player in the NHL. What year is it exactly? I know it could be. Did we go back to 2019? Did we? That's going to be a heck of a trivia question 20 years from now. All these things happen in the same season. What year is it? I don't know.
Yeah. Alan, honestly, the list of topics rather short today because I think we're going to spend a lot of time on one topic, but you mentioned Mason Rudolph. Let's start there. Kenny Pickett returning to practice today. We thought he might give it a shot this week. Tomlin didn't roll him out when speaking yesterday, but he actually got in some work today in a limited capacity. Are you still of the mindset, though, like you just mentioned, Mason Rudolph is starting quarterback? Are you just saying that because of right now he's the de facto number one, or do you really think that Kenny's not going to be able to go on Saturday and it is going to be Mason?
No, I mean, I think that Kenny is probably going to start. I do.
Okay.
We talked to Mason today, and I honestly feel bad for him because I feel like it's Lucy with the football. A lot. Somebody, I believe it was Joe Rutter from the Trib, asked Mason. There was a time, I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2020, where Mason practiced all week and Ben didn't practice at all, and then he started the game anyway. I believe it was at the Chargers, maybe. Was that in 21? There was definitely a game in there where Mason was going to be the starter all week, and then Ben came back and played anyway. And Mason's reaction when he was asked about that was yeah, and I could just see it happening again. I don't feel bad for Mason for the career situation that he's in. I mean, I think he got kind of a raw deal, but if you want a better one, just play better. I feel like that's the way the NFL works. But man, I have to feel for him, just in general about the way things have gone. I feel like Mason Rudolph is the embodiment of the why do you keep giving me your hardest battles meme? In terms of an NFL quarterback,
Yeah, why do you keep giving me your toughest battles? It's how are you still here?
How are you still alive? Right.
Yeah, I put up that clip of Brock Osweiler grabbing his helmet when the Broncos are up 41-10 on the Raiders, and then Peyton Manning just goes back into the game anyway and said that was Mason seeing Kenny come onto the practice field today. Yeah, I mean, you're not owed anything, right, in this league, but it's he's just that close to getting another opportunity, whether it's for or to show something for next season for another team, in a backup capacity or something like that, as opposed to being a QB3 like he is right now for the Steelers. Go and show something. And yeah, as of right now, I'm in agreement with you. I think that we end up seeing Kenny on Saturday, so it would not give Mason the opportunity that it looked like he was going to get.
And the other thing is, it doesn't matter as much as what you do when you're on the field, but as we're going to talk about later, the way you carry yourself in this league does matter. And Mason, in what has been admittedly a pretty rough set of circumstances, has really handled himself like a pro all the way through. He's been a good teammate. The guys like him. The other quarterbacks in the room like him. I think that's such a credit when you have guys that are younger than you that come in and above you, and they like you and your presence. Literally, they were happy that he came back. I think that really shows a lot about the character of the person that is Mason Rudolph. I think if he does get a shot, he's going to take it seriously. Like I said, you get what you earn in general. I don't feel, he's being well compensated to be a third string quarterback. I don't feel bad for him, but I think it's just it's a tough situation that is played out in a number of different ways for Mason compared to maybe the way things go for guys of his talent level around the league.
I'll tell you what, if Antonio Brown were the offensive coordinator, if we had ABOC, Mason Rudolph would absolutely be the starting quarterback for this team. You want to talk about a guy going to bat for somebody? He's been very vocal on social media that Mason Rudolph should be the quarterback for this football team. So maybe we should look at ABOC.
Would also be playing if he was OC. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Obviously
again,
not the full like Jackie Moon situation, but
is that the guy you want? Is that the guy you want in your corner? As we discussed yesterday, like I don't really know how much that's doing for Mason's starting quarterback candidacy. Well, AB wants him to play. Oh, really? What's wrong with him then?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's what they should do. Like, hey, Antonio, what would you do in this situation? Okay, let's do the opposite of what that answer just was.
Starting Duck,
Alan, I would
because Antonio Brown said he likes Mason. Okay, got it. Yeah, makes perfect sense now.
Alan, that wasn't the only injury to talk about. Very interesting injury reports. DNPs for Trenton Thompson with the stinger. Minka Fitzpatrick, who was already rolled out, knee injury. Didn't expect Samalo with his shoulder thing. Just looks like he's not going to practice. And Najee Harris still dealing with the knee thing. Also didn't practice. But when you look at the limited participation, guys, that's where it's interesting to me. Kenny Pickett, I just mentioned, but Elijah Riley working his way back. Cam Hayward, obviously in concussion protocol, but then Broderick Jones with a little bit of an ankle thing and Pat Freiermuth with a little bit of a knee thing popping up on the injury report. Is that anything to monitor the rest of I mean, obviously we got to monitor it, but like at all concerned about their availability?
Yeah, not concerned about Broderick Jones and Pat Freiermuth at this juncture. Go back to the top. I saw Minka today walking around and no brace, no limp. Looks pretty promising for him to be able to make a return this season. I think that will depend on the Steelers remaining in the hunt. I don't think they're going to play a less than 100% Minka Fitzpatrick in a meaningless game. But I think if they can find a way to win this game, I think him playing next week starts to look plausible based on what I saw today. So with no Minka, no Trenton Thompson, he is expected to practice tomorrow. Seems to be on track to play in this game, but we'll see. Usually, stinger is just how much can you deal with in terms of the pain. So I expect that Trenton Thompson will be available to play. But that meant that at safety today was Patrick Peterson and Eric Rowe. If you're not familiar with who Eric Rowe is, he's an 8th-year vet. He's on the Steelers practice squad. They signed him back when Elijah Riley and Keanu Neal both were injured there kind of consecutive weeks. So he's been on the practice squad a couple weeks. He's got a lot of experience. So Eric Rowe and Patrick Peterson right now, you're starting safeties. Elijah Riley working his way back. Looks like he will be able to play this week. And I would expect him to come off the IR this week. So you can make him and Miles Killebrew the second team maybe. And that's tough. Now, interestingly enough, Patrick Peterson spoke today and said, not really opposed to the idea of moving to free safety long term, which I thought was pretty interesting and maybe something that we will leave for further discussion at some point in the future. But I thought that was pretty interesting. I wrote a pretty long story about it at SteelersNow.com. Rod Woodson very famously did that after sort of, Hall of Fame career as a corner, played, I think it was 5 more years as a free safety with the Baltimore Ravens. And the way the Steelers love that 3 safety package and the ability to be a versatile backup at a couple other spots, that seems pretty tempting. Like if the Steelers aren't going to bring DeMonte KZ back, having Patrick Peterson be the 3rd safety seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, I would agree. You mentioned Rod Woodson, Charles Woodson talked about that though too. I mean, there's been other guys that have made that transition. Eric Rowe, like I put this out yesterday when I think it was Nick that mentioned about him. I was like, oh yeah, they have Eric Rowe. I completely forgot that they even brought him in when they had those injuries take place. So it's at least a guy that could provide something. He has 8 years of NFL experience, as you mentioned. But Alan, I think we should get to the topic of the day for us here. You've been sitting on this one. You said you've been waiting for a while about this. George Pickens spoke to the media today, which I feel like is kind of note in itself, the fact that he spoke to the media. And actually, Alan, you know what? You're in the media, so I don't even know if we should be allowed to talk about football or anything related to George Pickens anyway.
No, I shouldn't bring it up because, what do I know about football? You know what? This is the most absurd thing. Like, just get aside from the meat of the comments here. Like, the idea that people that do my job don't understand what we're talking about is nonsense. Like, it's absolute nonsense. Like, there are some people that do my job that don't know what they're talking about, but there are a lot of former players in the media. There are a lot of former coaches in the media. And there are a lot of media members who know a lot about football. The idea that I can't break down George Pickens' play and point out when he's dogging it and when he's not doing a very good job and when he screws up, that's nonsense. In addition to the other stuff, which is woof.
Yeah, I agree. As somebody that's not even on that side, right? Like, obviously, just doing the podcasting stuff with you, like, I obviously do not like those comments. And it's just like, it's one isolated instance, but it's becoming an isolated instance, enough isolated instances that they're kind of all being lumped together with him. But yeah, not a good look for him to have these comments. But Alan, what I will say is, as far as that goes, you mentioned to say that they don't know about football, like people in the media and stuff like that. One thing I've always appreciated about you is your knowledge, aside from just being so dialed into what you are covering itself. Like, obviously covering the Steelers, but you can have a conversation about it on a much larger picture. And I think that might not be the case for everybody, and that maybe is what you're talking about too. But yeah, he, like, really demeaning comments, right? Like, it's kind of interesting because he's talking about them not having the right to talk about his job, but he's talking about their job. Like, so in a way, it's kind of doing exactly what he's belittling.
The best part about that is the last thing that Mike Tomlin said at his press conference on Monday, 26 hours before George Pickens was speaking, was something along the lines of, I put it on my Twitter account, the exact quote. Maybe you can even bring it up and show people or read it, whatever. We play in the NFL. We should expect people to be analyzing our actions. That is literally the last thing his head coach said yesterday. And today, George Pickens comes back with, well, the media doesn't know what they're talking about. They have no right to judge me. Are you listening at all when your coach speaks? At all? Like, are you hearing anything the man says? Because it sure doesn't seem like it.
Wasn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought there was something. Didn't Tomlin just meet with him? Or like, did that not actually?
Tomlin had a meeting with him last week and then did an interview with the team website, about why he felt it was necessary to meet with George Pickens about his attitude and his behavior and how it was hurting George and the team on the team website Saturday before the game. And then Pickens goes out, gives a mediocre effort, is pouting on the sideline, doesn't block, doesn't chase down an interception, and now it's everybody but his fault. It's everybody else's fault.
Yeah, I don't know, Alan. I don't know what to make of this.
All right, well, let's get into the other part of this, because not only did he blame the media for I don't know for him being criticized, I guess. His response to why he didn't block for Jaylen Warren on what could have been a touchdown run was that he didn't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can go back in the locker room after saying that. If I was Jaylen Warren, if I was a guy that went to junior college, transferred 3 times, was an undrafted free agent, and now I'm the best running back in the league, but I have to settle for half carries because my team's first-round draft pick is blocking me. If I'm Jaylen Warren and I hear that guy say that, I'm going to beat the ever-loving crap out of him the next time I see him. And by the way, we all know that he could, because George Pickens has about the toughness that I have in this freaking pinky finger. Like, how can you go back in the locker room after say, well, I didn't want to get hurt, so I didn't try? How can you play with that team anymore? He can't. Like, I don't know how you can go back from that. I don't know how you can publicly admit that you didn't block for your teammate. You gave zero effort for your teammate, who, by the way, is trying to fight through 3 tacklers to score a touchdown because you were afraid to get hurt. What an embarrassing piece of garbage. He is unfit to wear the Steelers uniform. Like, he can't. I don't know how you go back. I don't know how you go back.
Real quick, I did want to mention that I found the quote that you're talking. I know that this isn't necessarily related to that play, but said no one outside of our locker room is going to make a play, and said his team should expect their actions to be analyzed as NFL players.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's this is more of what I took issue with. Obviously, if I was in your position, I'd obviously have a bigger issue with the entirety of everything he said today. But yeah, him not blocking because he's afraid to get hurt. You can get hurt at any moment doing anything, and you are being paid to play NFL football and didn't want to do what your job was on that play because you are afraid of getting hurt. I mean, what are you playing NFL football for then, pal?
I don't know how he can play this week. I'll be honest. I really don't. I don't know how the Steelers can put him back on the field after that. They made Deontay Johnson stand up in front of the team and apologize for not chasing down a fumble. Where's the accountability for this? I'll be honest, I see a lot of people putting Deontay Johnson and George Pickens into the same bucket. And I think you're doing quite a disservice to Deontay Johnson by doing that. Yeah. Because Deontay Johnson is inconsistent. Deontay Johnson is in his own head a lot of times. He's, there are problems with Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson is not this guy. Let's be real. They are not the same. And you're doing a big disservice to Deontay Johnson by comparing the two of them.
Right. And I think the fan base has always probably, and I say always, but I know George has only been here for a couple of years, seems to side with George more because of what the upside is, the talent level of him as opposed to Deontay Johnson. But, people that are around both of these guys every day, such as yourself, always speak more highly of Deontay Johnson. And Deontay always, I maybe I'm making too much about this, but I know that you in your position appreciate this. Deontay Johnson is available to talk to. George, I mentioned how surprised it was today that he was even available to talk to. Actually, side question, was that something you said? Did he want to talk? Or was this mandatory?
He has to. He has to. Every player has to be available once a week during
I
the
just
week
didn't know specifically today. Okay.
I don't know why specifically today, but he has to do it. And I don't know whether he was made to do it or when. Well, I don't know. I wasn't. I wasn't in the room. I was talking to Mason Rudolph at the time. But
I did want to mention too. You brought up the Deontay thing, the lack of effort on the fumble play where they made him obviously stand up in front of his team and apologize. But and now this could have been made based off performance, but we were told that it was about comments made. We saw Chuks Okorafor lose his starting job because of comments made. Where's that same standard being held now to George Pickens?
I don't know. And look, I've defended George in the past. I think he has a unique personality. I think George is generally well liked by the locker room. At least it was before today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So go ahead.
I don't think that a lot of the things that we've seen from George in terms of the sideline, in terms of, things that we've seen in the past have been a problem for his teammates. I have not seen that.
Yeah.
When you won't block for a guy and then you admit that you were just a coward and that's why you wouldn't block for the guy, then I think that starts to become a problem for your teammates. It has to. It has to. When you're not doing your job, then it's a problem for your teammates. If you're just sulking, I think players are willing to go and put an arm around your shoulder and try to get you right. The Steelers have been. Allen Robinson has spent a lot of time trying to do that. Deontay Johnson has spent a lot of time trying to do that. In fact, I believe that dealing with George Pickens is one of the things that has added to the mental load on Deontay Johnson this year. I really believe that.
Yeah.
I think most of what he's done has been relatively harmless. This is a whole nother thing. I mean, you have a meeting with the coach. The coach goes to the extreme step of telling the whole world that you had this meeting and how important it was, and then you give no effort, and then you say to the whole world, the reason you gave no effort is because you were afraid to get a boo-boo, and that you're not going to try for your teammate because you're selfishly afraid of being injured. And now we've crossed from quirky, weird loner dude that like we're trying to help out to like that guy's a poison and he's got to go. I can't see how he can play this week, and I can't see how he can return to Pittsburgh after this season. Like it's very quickly gotten to the point of no return for me.
Well, okay. Yeah, you're answering a lot of questions that I was going to ask then, because you've talked about how do you go forward from here. I was going to bring up just even like the next time that he's on a football field, blocking for somebody else. But you're saying as far as him even playing this upcoming game and forget that, let alone his future in Pittsburgh. I mean, man, that it is. It's a tough balance.
Well, maybe you like bench him for a half. I don't know. Maybe you could do that, I guess. And that's what you do to a college freshman who gets caught with weed in his glove box. Like, I guess not like this is your team. Like, and where's the leaders of the team? It shouldn't be Mike Tomlin. Like, look, I'm not advocating violence here, but sometimes dudes need to get their butt whipped. I'm just saying. Like, it is a thing that happens. Like, where are the leaders on this team that are going to hold this man accountable?
Yeah, sometimes somebody needs to be knocked down a peg, and I think he needs more than one peg here. Well, that's interesting because I was going to ask you, I didn't want to move away from George Pickens himself if you still had more to say about this, but I was going to ask you, on a much larger level than we've talked about the lack of leadership on offense and stuff. And this obviously seems like it is maybe, I don't want to absolve George Pickens of blame here, but since coming into the league, it doesn't seem like there's been that guy on the offensive side of the football. Now, this is why I was advocating so highly and was totally on board with the Allen Robinson edition, even with him being pretty much juiced of any athleticism and maybe not contributing as a receiver, because I thought he would be a good guy to take George under his wing. But how much is this George Pickens problem really a result of a bigger problem with the Steelers offense and lack of leadership on that side?
Well, I don't think it is. Look, I mean, we talked about this on this podcast a lot. The way the Steelers were very intentional about matching up the young players in this draft with guys that could be mentor types for them, right? I mean, there was a Patrick Peterson for Joey Porter. There was a T.J. Watt for Nick Herbig. There was a Cam Hayward for a Keanu Benton. There were guys to put with a lot of those guys. And, let's compare and contrast the way that Nick Herbig has followed T.J. Watt around like a puppy dog and attempted to emulate basically everything down to the way he holds his fork, okay? And the way that George Pickens has treated the addition of Allen Robinson, which is basically just that he's not there. What? At some point, it stops being the team's problem and it starts being the player's problem. Kenny Pickett came in the same class as George Pickens. Now he's older and he's a quarterback, but does anybody think Kenny Pickett has a leadership problem? Does anybody think Kenny Pickett has a maturity problem? Calvin Austin came in the same class, plays the same position, which is notoriously full of divas and hotheads. Does anybody think Calvin Austin has a maturity problem or an attitude problem? No, because he doesn't. He has had all the same leadership, all the same people guiding him. He is just a more mature, more professional personality that is better equipped to deal with what he's asked to do right now. And he's not as good of a wide receiver, but he's doing the job better.
Yeah. And when you start asking those questions, I don't want you to think that I'm looking to deflect blame from him at all. I just have to ask questions to get your perspective on this, because I was curious from not just an other players in the room perspective, but also a coaching perspective, being able to rein a guy in. I know that they kind of want the players themselves to be able to do that, and they should be able to do that. But, we've talked a lot about, let's just bring up his coach then, Frisman Jackson. Does he have a role in this in your mind at all, or should he not be, even part of this conversation?
Well, I think when you get to the point that the head coach is doing interviews about your problem, then it's already escalated well beyond your position coach. That means that the position coach was bringing this up in October, right? And now we're here, right? That's what that means. It's like when you get called into your boss's boss office, right? It's not, I want to know what you think, though. Like, if you like, I know there is a tendency. Like I always say this about coaches, right? People always blame coaching because nobody has a coach jersey in their closet, right? Like, so it's always easier. You have to really convince a fan that the problem is the player, not the coach. They're always willing to assume that their favorite player is actually a great dude and he's really good, and it's this dumb coach that's holding him back. You have to really beat it over their heads. Where are you with, if you're a fan with a number 14 jersey in your closet, where are you with this guy? Can you defend these actions? Can you cheer for him on Saturday?
I am a fan with the number 14 jersey, so I guess I'm the right person to ask this question to. But I don't like to write people off, and the conversation I think goes well beyond football. But obviously, I take huge issue with specifically the answer that he had for not blocking on that play. Again, it seems like there's a laundry list at this point of different isolated instances to the point where it's no longer an isolated thing with him. I have a hard time saying I'm ready to move on from this right now. I would like to, like you said, maybe do it in a more gradual process and see if we can stop it before it gets to that point, whether it is, benching for a half or making him inactive, whatever that might be. I don't know how he's going to react at that point, but that would give me an answer as to what I need to know anyway. I will say, though, he almost strikes me as the type of player that the only wake-up call that might work is, have the team that drafted you moving on and saying, you know what, go be somebody else's problem. Let them take the shot on this talent. And that being the wake-up call, which I hate to say, because I would have loved if it worked out in Pittsburgh. I think they knew they were taking a little bit of a risk when they took him in the second round, and that's why he was there in the second round for them to take. Alan, I'll be honest, when they drafted him, I said we'll be lucky to get 3 years out of him. I just had that feeling right from the bat, and stuff that I had heard about him going back to, I don't want to judge a high school kid, but there was some stuff going back to high school even before Georgia. I don't know. I'm again, I don't want to write off a 22-year-old, but we are getting very close to the point where I'm willing to do so.
Yeah, I think I really have big questions about how this gets resolved with both the locker room and
that was a good
coach.
point. Yeah, because that didn't even cross my mind. I obviously didn't like the answer, but it didn't get to the point in my mind before this conversation where I was like, oh, how do they go forward from this? But now that you bring it up, I'm like, man, yeah, if you're specifically, any of his teammates, but really Jaylen Warren in this situation, how do you approach this?
I don't know. I really don't. Like, Jaylen Warren is a tough, professional dude. He's quiet. He's not going to shout. But, man, that is a hardcore disrespect that I don't know how you – I don't know. I'm not inviting those two to the same party right now. I know that much. That's brutal.
Like, Nick and I had a conversation last week, and literally the title of the episode, basically most of the conversation was centered around, can the Steelers ease George Pickens' frustration within the offense? And this had this was before this, had nothing to do really with this. It was more so about, his route tree, what it looked like, the lack of touches within it. We're not even having a conversation about that. Now, is it maybe a snowball effect from that we've gotten to this point? Is it just frustrations of him within the offense?
He has right to be frustrated about the offense. Everyone's frustrated about the offense. He's right to be frustrated by his role in it. And, I don't think that that's unusual. It's just about the way.
But he's the only one reacting this way.
Right. But there are 26 guys on offense, 25 guys on offense, and none of the rest of them are causing these kind of problems. Almost none. I guess Deontay. Maybe, I don't know. Najee Harris has made some weird comments, but on the field anyway, no problems from Najee other than he fumbled, which was clearly not intentional. But I don't know. I have a hard time getting my head around and the players and Mike Tomlin. If I'm Mike Tomlin, I am so furious right now that somebody's going to have to hold me back from cutting him. If he went through all of that to talk about how he needs to be better, and this is the response in the very next week, I don't know. I don't know how you move on from that.
I really wish that the 2 days were reversed. That we had Tomlin speaking a day after George said this, because I would be very curious as to what his response to this is going to be, because he's going to get asked about it whenever it is the next time that he's going to speak. But I don't know what the rest of this week is going to look like for Tomlin, for George Pickens, for anybody.
Well, this may be a week that Mike Tomlin talks again. Generally, when there's like uncertainty about the quarterback position, he'll have to talk again later in the week. Could be very interesting.
It's yeah. Hey guys, I'm here to talk about the quarterbacks. Yeah, but George Pickens.
Yeah,
I'm sure he'll love that.
I mean, technically, we can ask for him any day. It's just not really done. But man, it might need to. I was like I said, I was interviewing Mason Rudolph at the time. I was reading Nick's tweets like everybody else, and I was like, "Is that really what he said?" And it just floored me. It floored me.
Yeah, understandably so. I think most people feel the exact same way. Alan, anything else before we get out of here?
No, I don't think so. I liked the comments from yesterday's episode. I thought there was some disagreement, but I thought it was intelligent.
Yeah,
keep those coming. Keep the questions coming. Maybe we'll have a day this week where we can get to a bunch of them. Maybe when, like, I don't know, we don't have 9 pieces of news. And that's it, man.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, tell the people where they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on Twitter, PGH Steelers Now, sites account, SteelersNow.com. Like and subscribe to YouTube channel. That video of Kenny Pickett working out at practice today is right up there, as well as Mason Rudolph and some of George's comments. So go get it right from the horse's mouth.
There you go. Maybe the Steelers should just put up side by side on 2 screens the video that we have of Kenny and the video that we have of Mason, and make their determination who's starting based off those 2 clips.
I would not recommend that course of action, but it is available to them if they would like to do so.
There we go. Yeah, for everybody in the comments, we apologize for not getting to it. Obviously, we had one topic that kind of dictated today's show, but we will get to that stuff in the very near future. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments. Leave a 5-star review if you are listening somewhere else. For Alan Saunders, for myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.